this Voices for Freedom meet the candidates in the local body, Taupo local body election meeting. Good to see people turning up on a cold, wet night. People really care about this election, this local body election. And a big thank you to the candidates for taking their time to come here to this Voices for Freedom meeting and answer some questions, and so we can get a feel about where they stand on certain topics. So the way the evening's going to go, we're going to have a short welcome, then we're going to hand over to a 1-minute introduction from each of the candidates, and you've all had pre-received the questions that they're going to be asking. They'll be getting a minute to answer each question. And we're going to go to around 8 o'clock. And then after that, the candidates are going to leave and go home, and we're going to have a chat amongst ourselves. For those who don't know, I'm Tristan. I'm not a Voices for Freedom member, but I'm on the Voices for Freedom email list, and I've been supportive of Voices for Freedom and a lot of the good work they do, and RCR and those types of things pretty much since they started, and I appreciate the work they do. So I'm going to read the vision statement for Voices for Freedom. Voices for Freedom exists to preserve the inalienable rights of every New Zealander to live freely and make their own decisions without interference, intrusion or coercion from government or special interests. We stand for core Kiwi values, personal liberty and restrained government, and for a sovereign New Zealand free from the control of power-hungry global organisations. Our vision is to have a VFF local group presence in every neighbourhood, and that Voices for Freedom be in a position to influence the direction New Zealand takes in areas such as economics, culture, politics and more. How we're going to get there, aka our mission. Long-lasting freedom and our Kiwi way of life depends on New Zealanders being able to stand their ground against unjust or illegal mandates, laws or threats. Our efforts are therefore focused on empowering individuals to peacefully defend their position of personal sovereignty through our campaigns, educational resources, national networks of local groups. We work to re-establish resilience back into local communities, understanding that the tyrants of today will wither away when society regains its strength, integrity and sense of responsibility. Parliamentary reform will come as a result of empowering, organising and emboldening more Kiwis to stand their ground when challenged by government injustice. And I think I have been aware of this local body election, of the huge numbers of people turning up at these meetings. People are very motivated and engaged in this local body election, and I think Voices for Freedom has had a hand in that. So without further ado, we're going to hand over now for the 1-minute introduction of the candidates. 1-minute introduction, we'll start here. And
I knew there was a reason I said it.
yeah. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Richard Kay, and I'm standing for the Taupo Council. Just a quick history. I moved to New Zealand in 1974 from Africa, and I've worked just about everywhere around New Zealand in the commercial fishing industry, and I came up here and did something really strange and bought a lavender farm, and with my wife, who unfortunately has passed away, I continue to make a whole range of skincare products that she designed, and I sell them at the market. I'm really strong here on accountability, transparency and controlling rates, because I feel that they're just blown out of all proportion at the moment. Bigger issues that need to be dealt with, and sticking with the core business, which is water, wastewater, and sewage. And we've got huge problems there.
Okay, I'm Steve Putter. I'll be new to council, but that means I have no baggage. I care about transparency, accountability and good governance. I've been serving on community boards for 35 years. I know how to work with limited funds. I've worked in human resources, adult education and employment advocacy for the same 35 years. I'm a people person. My company is called The People Effect. I'm used to managing conflict. I'm a licensed private investigator, which means I'll be checking out the number plates on your cars before I leave. I've studied governance and I've taught it. I know how governance is supposed to work. I ran a series of free governance workshops in association with council for community boards in Taupo and Turangi, repeated in the year following. I'm standing because I have become concerned at some decisions that are made without public engagement, and I don't want to see council captured by interest groups.
Hello everybody, I'm Rachel Shepherd. I'm standing for the Taupo ward. I recognise almost all of you. I don't know that I need to go into too much detail about myself. I've just completed my first term, and I undertook during that first term to learn absolutely everything I could about local government, how it works, what the challenges are, what the hurdles are, and there are multiple. And I guess upon reflection, I feel we are in a very heavily legislated, regulated environment with very narrow parameters. So we're having to find different ways of governing. We're having to find different ways of finding income, because the council has this is quite hard with the drumming circle. We've got two sources of revenue. We've got rates and we've got borrowing. And that system is broken and it is not working. So how do we find other sources of revenue? Well, we've invested the TEL fund as of this term, and it's made $20 or $30 million. Hopefully that can alleviate rates by paying for some of these community projects. And hopefully we can find other ways as well, like with the East Urban Land Block and land sales. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Belinda Walker and I'm standing for council for the first time. Although I have spent 3 terms on our Kinloch representative group, so it's kind of like a halfway house. I've got some idea, not a full idea, but it's the reason I've decided to put my hand forward and go for a full council seat. So together with Darren, we've got 3 kids, one at university, one at college, and one at primary school, so we paced ourselves. But you know, I'm really committed to our community. I'm grateful this year to have been made a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit for community services, and it was around community leadership, advocacy, sport and arts. So it is across the broad range. My background originally was in the corporate world, was in marketing and strategic planning. I currently am the development manager for like Taupo basketball and Taupo cricket, and my absolute passion is health coaching and helping people there. So around our core issues, I absolutely believe we've got to get a handle on these rates and understand what they are, but understand what we can do within them, and just like Rachel said, understanding where our other options are for making money.
Hi folks, I'm Dave Freeman. Most of you wouldn't know me from a bar of soap. I started working when I was 11 years old, started in racing. I joined the army, done 20 years in the New Zealand Army. Got out for that, had a transport business for a little while, got sick of that, went into hospitality, done that for a while, went back to transport. I then went to Afghanistan as a civilian contractor for the United Nations. I'm standing because I saw excessive waste of money both in the army and the UN. People tend to spend their money like it doesn't matter. I think the ratepayers deserve to get value for money, and I think it's like any household, the council really must learn to live within its means and spend wisely. I'd like to think I've got a little bit of common sense and a little bit of experience when it comes to council. It's a new thing for me, but the way I look at it is I couldn't do a lot worse than the ones that are already in there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Duncan Campbell, staying for Taupo Ward. My 3 priorities are restore democracy, take back control of council, and third, cap rates to inflation. Now the best place to see what I'm about is my website, Taupo.com. I post at least weekly. I'm a practicing civil engineer and first term councillor, and very much concerned how this council operates. It seems to have been operating for quite some time. The staff bureaucrats are firmly in control, and elected members do not get access to information when they need to make the decisions that matter. When I say they, I don't include every elected member, because I know some are quite happy to be strung along. I'm not one of those, and I'm sure not some of you will have noticed. I'm hoping for substantial change this election, and much of my efforts the past year or so have been to try and educate the public about what the council gets up to, and whether or not that's can have any impact. We'll see in a few weeks' time.
Thank you very much for those. Thank you very much for those introductions. And if you go a little bit over, that's okay. And so the first question, and in that introduction, I said there's a big emphasis on wanting our local body representatives to push back against, government agendas or things that breach our Bill of Rights or things we're not happy with. So the first question is fluoride without consent. Councils are being mandated to add fluoride to water supplies without asking the public. The Director General of Health has got the sole power. It's been ruled in a court of law to be medicating the water. Breaches our Bill of Rights. Do you believe public health decisions should be made locally or nationally? For example, do you think the Director General of Health should be mandating councils to add fluoride to drinking water? And I think we'll come back this way.
Yeah, well, okay. I think if we could trust the Director General of Health to make wise decisions in our best interest, and to be not only democratically accountable but in line with the Bill of Rights, then I'd be happy for them to decide on behalf of all of us if fluoride should stay in the drinking water. Because if they did that, I'm fairly sure that we wouldn't be having any fluoridation at all. However, because that isn't going to be happening in any sort of hurry, I will advocate instead for that particular health decision to be made locally. And I'm not too sure what other public health decisions are within the council remit, but probably they could be too. That's me.
Mine's short and sweet. My body, my temple, my choice. I should be allowed to choose what I put into my body. I don't need the Director of Health to tell me that I need this or I need that. As you can see from my body, I don't always make the right choices. However, they are mine to make, and I don't believe that anybody should be telling anybody what to put into their body. Thank you.
I would agree that you should be having a choice, but also I think it comes down to really good communication of the issues at hand. And so whatever issue comes down, if the communication is good enough and the logic is good enough, then everyone will be doing what they're asking us to do anyway. So I do believe in local.
Yeah, I'm very much pro-choice on such things. Mass medication to me is not demonstrably justifiable, which is the legal benchmark. So in my opinion, I think people should be able to choose.
Okay. My answer to that is decisions should be made locally by referendum, but that's not the law since 2021. We must deal with and accept the reality of that for now. Yes, we can agitate, but it's not going to be until the next elections. When we talk about New Zealand Bill of Rights, there's already been a Supreme Court decision back in 2018 with the Taranaki District Council that Section 11, which was the right to refuse medical treatment, didn't apply. So we've already had one strike against that. As far as the Director General mandates, she shouldn't, but she can. and she already has with 14 councils. Taupo already does fluoridate, but under the new law, we must continue to do so. So there's no actual choice in that, right? So we would need a law change. That's before we can actually get our way on that, all right? Perhaps council would consider public access to non-fluoridated water, so at various access points around town, or supply subsidised filters for homes. But there you go. That's me.
I'm going to start by saying that for my first 18 years of life, I had fluoridated water because it was the only thing that killed the bugs in Africa for us to do it. But personally, I would say no. I know that where I live, on White Road, I have absolutely pure water. We've had it tested. It comes out of a spring, and even if the Director General says you've got to fluoridate it, it ain't going to happen out there, that's for sure. But if people want fluoride, that is a personal choice. They can get tablets, they can get fluoridated toothpaste if they want. That's their choice. But for everyone else, I think we should find a way to not do it. And it may be a referendum in 3 years' time. But let's not do it before the election, before an election cycle, otherwise it's going to cost us a damn fortune to run a referendum. And you know, that's the problem.
Thank you very much. Personally, I'm not in support. I'm against any I think a Bill of Rights issue should never go to a referendum, because 51% of the population says they're happy for the Director General of Health to medicate the water for fluoride or dengue fever or whatever. Then the 49% have to accept the medication. Is that a right? Is that a protected right? Or should we have the choice? This is really, for me, what the issue comes down to. So I'm not a fan of the referendum on any Bill of Rights issue that prior to 2020 we all thought we had these secure rights, freedom of travel, freedom of association, etc., etc. The second question, climate change and managed retreats, and I'm going to just put a little brackets, net zero in general in this one. The climate change narrative is being used to justify planning restrictions, levies, and even forced relocation, as well as increasing our rates right here, right now, today. There's a very good movie, Managed Retreat, that, who did that movie? Was it us? Alistair. It's called Managed Now. Alistair Harding. It's a very good movie. The central government sets the legal framework that local councils must follow. Climate Change Response Act 2002, Net Zero Carbon Act 2019, require emissions reduction and climate resilience planning. Agenda 2030 and Net Zero, they want us using our cars 50% less by private vehicles, 50% less by 2030 than now. So they want us driving less. That's a big part of it. Local governments are now legally obligated to consider climate impacts in their long-term plans and resource management decisions. Question, what is your opinion on climate change impact statements being included in the local government policies? Richard?
I think one of the big problems that we face in climate change is that whatever we do in New Zealand is going to have diddly squat effect across the world. If you look at it globally, we look at China, India, America is pulled out, and some of the European countries, they are not going to change that much. You look at what is happening in Australia, where they've gone hard out on it, and they could be facing during next winter huge great power blackouts. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I believe we should look at the climate issues that are related to what we have here and deal with those. We can't deal with the global ones, we can only deal with our local issues. And to be perfectly honest, trying to stop people driving is going to be a real problem, because a majority of the population live outside the Taupo Central Park. And if you try and stop people driving, you've got to provide some other means of transport for them to get in and out from their homes. And I think that is going to be a problem. It's something we've got to deal with, but we can't do it easily.
Okay, I thought long and hard on this, mate. My answer is that climate change impact statements must be included in local government policies. The reason for that, I believe, is that climate change is happening. It will continue to do so, regardless of what we do. Any impact we can have on it is puny compared with what nature itself is doing. Climate change is cyclic. It has always happened, and probably will always happen. It just goes round and round and round. So if you go back far enough in science and look up snowball Earth, you'll find out the time at which the planet was on complete iceberg. It was just completely white. All right. So now we're going the other way. All right. The only valid discussion is the extent to which humans have accelerated it and whether we can slow it. Given the inevitability of it, if we come back to the central question, Council must have plans to deal with it. To that extent, I agree. Climate impact statements have to be part of planning. It doesn't make sense to allow building permits in floodplain areas that are floodprone. It doesn't make sense. It's got to be in the plan.
I have no issue looking after our environment, none whatsoever. But it's got to make sense. And to me, carbon credits, a tax, is not making sense. I don't see the benefit of that. I don't understand why the only way to offset those is to plant pine instead of native when it poisons the ground below it and it destroys any hope of life. It becomes unproductive land. So in that regard, I'm opposed. However, in saying that, when someone buys a home, they ask for a land information memorandum document from the council, and they have a right to know what the land is like where they are living. So from a pragmatic standpoint, if you're in a flood-prone area, sure, we have to allow for that. We have to inform the public about that. I'm just concerned about the measures that are being taken in the name of climate change, and to me it just doesn't make sense.
So I come from Southland originally, actually a farm, and I can remember, and it's about the same altitude actually as here, and I can remember as a child growing up, we had lots of snow, and now we just get a little bit of snow down there. So something is changing, and it's cyclical, certainly, but we need to localise our responses to it. So that is one answer to one place, is understanding what is happening in our local areas. And as Rachel makes a good point, we need to know, you need to inform people. If they're building in an area and we know that it's had a flood after flood, or there's something else that is prone to it. But it's also extremely valid to talk about what are we planting, what is happening in our nature. If we are looking after our nature for our generations, then it'll look after us. So I think we have to be mindful of it, but I do think we have to have a local solution to it. So I think that's probably at both.
Yeah, I'm in great favour of looking after the environment. I think it's important that we do. Unfortunately, all these climate solutions that they have all seem to be very expensive and not well thought out. I think that it's really just become a cash cow for people that are making a lot of money off it. I think sensible policies, and you're right, if people want to build in a flood-prone area, they need to be aware of what they're actually doing. But I don't think we need to have a whole pile of experts and expensive solutions to problems that aren't going to go away if we minimise the best we can using the cheapest available means and everything that's available to us, using common sense. Thank you.
I've got to say that I think the placards are a little bit of a giveaway of what answers will be pleasing to this audience. But look, I haven't spent much time on the managed retreat side of things because I know that's primarily coastal. But I do not believe in the scaremongering going on with the climate change policies, which are costing us dear, like $1 million we're paying each year for carbon credits to offset the Taupo landfill. But as an aside, and one useful thing I did learn at our LGNZ gathering last year or so, and they are useful for some things, was a presenting lawyer told us that unlike places like the UK and the USA, local councils and here in New Zealand are apparently liable, unlike in the UK and the USA, if they make planning decisions which go awkwardly wrong, like say designating an area of land safe for building houses, which later the sea level rises and they get flooded. So that's probably one reason that councils near the coast are quite concerned, and there's probably explains some of their conservative attitudes going on, which I imagine they're not pleasing to some of the people there. Doesn't really affect us here though, managed retreat, I don't know.
Thank you very much. Just on if there's like a river going past and there's an historic risk of flooding, like a flood management issue or a geothermal, there's some up by Taupo College, it's a known kind of possibility of that. Is that a climate change issue? Is that a risk of, you know, the lay of the land, the topography, like knowing something on a limb report about the area you're building, is that climate change? Just.
I don't think it's necessarily climate change. It's just sensible if you're looking at it, and there is known geothermal activity in that area. Why would you build a house on it?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
If you want
let's
free
be
heating.
sensible.
You want free heating.
Yeah, let's just be sensible about it. I mean, you look at what's happened in Auckland, where they've had all the floods, and they've built on the floodplain. What do you expect? You know, it's probably because the land was cheap, and the developers made a hell of a lot of money out of it. But now they can't get insurance. Or if it is, it's astronomically high.
I think everything's being attributed to climate, and the word climate is being used too often. It's the environment. It's environmental, fundamentally.
Yes, yeah. We want to know if there's a flood risk or a geothermal risk or a volcanic risk or a high wind risk. And just to you, Duncan, they can move you, manage retreat people on volcanic zones. You know, it's not just it's not
retreat from Taupo then.
yeah, but it's not just the sea level rise, which isn't happening.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was saying here, that in New Zealand, unlike apparently the UK and the USA, if it's a volcano, councils could be held liable for allowing development to happen, but later on natural hazards like flooding or volcanoes happen, and council foots the bill. Apparently, but I look too much into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what time do you need to go for that?
1:45.
4:10. Okay. Local government New Zealand has drifted into more explicitly political territory, taking stances that align with more government-led reforms, e.g. climate change policies, 3 water reform. Should Taupo District Council remove itself from local government New Zealand?
Yes, they should. Yes, I believe they should. Some argue we are better in there to exert some influence, but already around half the population of New Zealand is not represented in there, and I say the 70,000 membership fee plus attendance costs are only the thin end of the wedge of the cost for this council. It's rather the constant barrage of often politicise messaging and follow the crowd mentality, which does more harm. Yes, it would be good to work alongside others if that can be made to happen, but not there.
Yeah, I'm opposed to LG New Zealand. I don't think they do anything of great benefit for any council. Again, it's all politicised messaging and probably just central government trying to get more and more control over the councils, stop them from actually working for the ratepayer. So I'm definitely opposed to them. I'd like to see them gone. Thank you.
What I'd like to see is somewhere that we as a council can see what is the best practice around the country. I really am opposed to wasting time, my time, your time, everybody's time and money. Why don't we find out what the best practice is around the country, and then we can just do that. Hopefully that's what you get out of an LG, but you know, that's what I'd like to think was there, but certainly if it's politicised, that has got no place in that kind of organisation.
LGNZ was set up to be an advocacy group to help local government get messaging to central government. And unfortunately, I don't see that working at all. I happened to sit in on an LGNZ online meeting to discuss the rates caps discussion. And every person from a council who was on that Zoom meeting said that they didn't want to oppose rates caps. They wanted to use the opportunity to talk to the government and just let them know what influences that they are having and the negative influences that they are having that are driving a lot of the rates increases. So I was really disappointed when they went to the LGNZ conference and said, right, we've decided we're going to oppose rates caps. So no, I don't see the value anymore. I gave it a triennium. I went to a conference and I've really tried to understand how they can advocate well for local government. I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, bearing in mind that I haven't been on council, so I am not aware of what the history is. So I went and did some research. My answer would be a cautionary one at the moment, because I want more information. So my answer is no, not yet. We should stay with it. It needs to be brought up at council and confirm the cost-benefit ratio. So that's what I'm looking for. If we're spending 70 grand, what are we getting in return for that? So I couldn't find a cost for Taupo, but thank you, Duncan, you just said 70 grand. I found a cost for Southland at 64 and Westland at 42,000. And then I went looking, as a good investigator would, for contrary evidence to see what's the other side of the argument, and picked up on only one example where the Chief Exec of Wanganui Council reported that for their 60,000 membership, they had access to 1.2 million in learning assets. Then there was a lively discussion and a motion to leave LGNZ was voted down. Now at 60 grand from somebody who comes from adult education, if you were to put in a complete training and development department into council, it would cost you one hell of a lot more than $60,000 or $70,000. So I want to see, what are those resources? Are they worth the 70,000? And if they are, then I would say stay with it. Work it, milk it, you know. Thank you.
Well, actually, Steve, I totally agree with you.
Good. We'll go home now.
I don't think there's anything else I can say. It'd be like repeating the same thing time and time again. And with a new council coming in, we should be able to sit down and look at it, see what it is, address it, see what benefit we're going to get out of it, and what it's going to cost us. Because if the membership fee is $70,000, then what's the actual cost going to be to get our delegates down to the meetings and everything else? So you can bet your bottom dollar that it's not going to be $70,000, it's going to be upwards of probably over 100.
I would say the LGNZ conferences is a local government conference. I think a local government conference is a good idea.
Yeah.
I met a lot of other councillors, a lot of other mayors and CEOs. That networking is exactly how we then say, hey, how have you done it? Can we learn from each other? I found those really valuable. Just, I haven't seen any other benefits so far.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like to me that LGNZ is like another government bureaucracy that they're just going to build another government department on, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger if we let it. And it may not come out of our rates bill, but it sure as hell will come out of our tax bill. And I agree with you. You know, if you can go to a local conference and talk to people, you can find a lot of things a lot easier and a lot quicker.
It's very good that we've got two standing councillors at the moment, as well as people who haven't been in there, so we get a bit of a feel for how it is for people working with our LGNZ, and from the inside and the outside. Yeah, it's really good. Do you want one more? Pardon? Okay.
We can start with that.
Yes.
We'll start with you.
Yeah, we'll start with you. Democracy and representation. More and more decision making is happening behind closed doors or by unelected panels. JMA springs to mind. What is your position on co-governance or appointments without a vote?
So appointments and a vote. Let's start with the transparency side, and I can give you an absolute example of where I stand on this kind of thing, because I have sat on a Kinloch representative group. Now, I was appointed as a community rep, so there was an open call for that, but I was an appointee. Now, that for Kinloch, I think was a cost-effective approach, because then you're seen on that. But that group, it's held in Little Kinloch Hall, the Wi-Fi is not so flash, and so it couldn't be live streamed at the quality you would have expected as TDC, so they weren't able to do that. So I chose on my trusty phone to live stream that meeting every time we held it, because I also created a community group which has got 2,500 people on it called Kinloch Families, and I streamed it to that group. Now it's a roughshod solution. It's not technically beautiful. It even fell over one time when the sun struck the phone for like an hour, and after that it stopped transmission. But I've got an absolute commitment to that transparency and finding ways to make it transparent. So I sit both ways. I've seen good appointments. I saw a really good appointment on that group of an iwi rep, and it made a big difference to Kinloch. Not to iwi, not to other groups, to Kinloch. And so I saw an advantage to it, but I don't believe it should happen behind closed doors, and I do believe in transparency. And I think in the case of JMA, an absolute lack of coming out with enough communication, both by council staff and by councillors. There's a job to do for these items.
I'll go if you like, we can go back.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. No, decisions are made at the governance table, in my opinion. And even the Kinloch Rep Group. The Kinloch Representative Group will make a recommendation for their position, but it's still decided at the governance table, and that's how it should be. So I have no issue with community reps being on boards and making a recommendation to council, but it's the councillors at the governance table that makes those decisions, and that's the way it should be. We're elected to do that job.
Well, I'm instinctively against co-governance and unelected representatives on council. I'm standing for transparency, accountability and good governance. I'm a firm believer in democracy. Major decisions should be made by elected councillors representing the complete electorate on an equal representation basis. I do not see a need for or a benefit to all the residents from co-governance. Democracy is 2,500 years old. The word comes from the Greek words demos, people, and krasos, meaning rule. Democracy is not automatic. It's not self-executing. It doesn't happen by itself. It has to be fought for and protected against corruption, unequal representation, and other weakening forces. I'm glad I don't live in Russia, China, North Korea, and now, worryingly, the United States of America.
I think one of the big problems that the council have had so far is transparency. And if there had been a much better transparency on the JMA, perhaps it wouldn't have got to where it has now. And I said this at the other one of the other meetings. There is a legal definition of consultation. It comes from the Wellington Regional Council and the Wellington Airport. And if a challenge was made to the Taupo Council, it would fall over because it hasn't met those conditions on consultation. It is our duty as elected members of the council to make sure the ratepayers, who effectively are our shareholders, know what we're doing. We have to make the decisions, totally agree with that. We can have recommendations coming from a number of groups, but at the end point, the 12 councillors and the mayor have to make the decision. And it's then that the council, the employed members, go out and deal with it.
I might just jump in if you don't mind, because it might be interesting for some of the new councillors to know, potential councillors, I hope you'll be there, that under the Rivers Act, that the Local Government Act requirement to consult was negated under the Rivers Act. We were prohibited from consulting under the Rivers Act for the mandatory matters of the JMA.
Well,
It was in the legislation.
I have to say...
However, there are extension matters that I believe should absolutely be consulted on that are outside of that legislation, and I voted
Correct.
that way. When the decision came to the governance table, that's how I voted.
Yeah, correct. And as far as I can see, we have to deal with the Waikato River. It's an act of Parliament.
And there's also a resolution that was passed by a previous council that we will extend it to Taupo waters. Not Taupo Moana, but Taupo waters.
Yeah, but that can be overturned.
I don't think you can necessarily go back on an existing resolution of council, but that would be worth looking into, and that's actually why we voted to delay.
Yeah, we have to. We have to go back and look at it again.
Yeah, well, that's how it's been voted for, so we get that opportunity. Yeah.
Turning into some sort of debate.
Nothing wrong with that.
Good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I signed the taxpayer union pledge against it. So I really have to say I'm opposed for at least committees with financial or regulatory powers. And I think that'd be interesting for, I don't know so much about the Turangi mana, I can't say it. Yeah, that thing down there, the co-governance thing down there, that might be interesting to delve into. But look, I do have to say though, at one point, I did contemplate that it would be quite handy to have at the council table a few unelected officials educated and experienced enough on the ins and outs of democratic decision making in local government, not to mention even maybe a few engineers. And I'd also think a few commissioners like Tauranga might have done a better job of it than the 12 elected members we had this past term, actually, and it would have been cheaper too. But I now appreciate that even these most optimistic scenarios are still a compromise to a healthy democracy. But healthy democracy does actually mean that the public get more enlightened and interested to actually vote in people and hold them accountable. That's the gold standard, really, and that's what we should be aiming for. That's me.
Yeah, well, I think that the council took a page out of Jacinda Ardern's version of transparency and openness, because I don't think this council has that at all. As for co-governance, against that, I believe you get elected to the council to represent the whole community, not just some of them. So I'm also against the JMA. I believe that if they actually got off their butts and done something, there are enough Maori voters in this region that they could probably vote and get half their members elected onto council, and then joint management wouldn't be a problem. But they want to sit back, maybe they want a free ride. I can't say why they don't, but I do know that they don't. But yeah, no, I believe that if you're elected to council, you represent everybody. You don't give anybody an advantage over race or anything, or hey, let's have a JMA with the Indians. I'm sure they've got something they want to add to the thing. Well, then it's the business round table here in Taupo. Where do you stop with joint management agreements, and when does the council then become invalid. So that's my position on that anyway. That was the last one.
No, that was good. Belinda, do you want to?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you want to take another question?
you want
Oh,
one last
oh,
question?
you want one more? Yep.
Just aware of your time.
Yeah, you've just got one more to go, right?
We've got 2 more to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Rates and spending. Rates are going up year after year, but services are getting worse. It seems more money is being spent on consultants and strategy documents than on actual delivery. Will you commit to keeping rate rises at or below inflation?
Want to start with me?
Or would you, who wants to?
Yep. Great.
I don't mind. I
Okay.
thought you were looking at me, that was all.
I wasn't with you.
Okay. It depends on the measure of inflation that we're working on. I actually think that rates capping is a good thing. When we've defined our core business and prioritised that, then I think there will be other ways in which we can keep rates down. I don't believe that we can keep rates at household inflation. It's sitting at 2.7% at the moment, but construction inflation and civil inflation are a heck of a lot more. It costs 18% more to build a bridge now than it did 5 years ago. It costs 44% more to build a building now than it did 5 years ago. So I don't want to see our vital infrastructure delayed or not maintained. So whilst I do agree that we need to look at a way of capping rates, I think it needs to be realistic and achievable, and I think we have to find other ways of sourcing revenue. The rates model is absolutely broken, and I think we have to have some really honest conversations at central government level, because you pay rates and there's 15% GST added, and the government gets all of that, and then the government are not paying any rates at all on any of their government buildings. It's just not fair. Something's got to change, and we're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Look, I actually totally agree with Rachel on this one. In terms of, in concept, I do agree with the rates cap, but the devil's always in the detail, and understanding exactly what that is and what it means, and do we have a really clear ring fence around what our core functions are. And my passion is in sports and arts, and so I want to make sure the heartbeat of our district is served, but not from a rates. We need to find another source of income from those TEL funds Rachel's mentioned before, something else. But those core functions are our core rates, and it is broken. We are a tourist town. What's going on? Is everybody paying their fair amount, or is it all landing on the ratepayer? So, long answer to a short question is yes, in concept, agree with the rates cap. The concern is what inflation rate, and exactly as Rachel mentioned, if the inflation rate for all these big things we're building is a much higher rate, how can that equate to keeping it down to our consumer inflation rates? So it's understanding that, but we've got to make it work for our whole community. So in the end, we need to make more money and find a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I think that it's vitally important that the infrastructure gets looked after, so I'm in favour of caps rate, but not at the expense of damaging the infrastructure. I believe there's a lot of areas that can save money and get better value for money, but actually turn around and say, oh no, we're not going to inflate it, and then you let your infrastructure fall over, which in the long run is just going to hurt you even more. So I believe that it has to be sensibly applied. The aim is to reduce rates, like arts and everything. But, some things have to go, but infrastructure, the core infrastructure, really needs to be decided what has to be done, what can't be put off, and that needs to be done, and the cost just has to be borne. But there are other areas that can save money. I have a friend that works for the council that sits around, well, contractors do the job that he used to do. So they're paying for contractors to come in and do it, and he sits there with nothing to do because contractors are doing his job. So those sort of things need to be stopped. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll disagree with the last three, and I'll say absolutely yes. We should be committed to keep rates at or below inflation, and I've signed the taxpayer union's pledge to do just that. There are lots of excuses floating around why we can't afford to do it, and it will all end in disaster. But the harsh truth is that it is unsustainable to not do it, because anyone without a small extra fortune will sooner or later be rated out of their homes. It seems to me that this message just isn't getting through to a lot of candidates or even the current elected members. And I have been inside there long enough to appreciate there is a lot of slack in the system, and things have gone way too far already, so the reins need to be pulled in and held onto tightly by voters now and into the future.
Is it me? Okay. In strictly answering the question, because that's what I did, no, I can't commit to that bold statement. There are too many unknowns for me to commit to that. I can commit to exerting a downward pressure on rates increases through control of expenses where that can be done. Anybody can do a slash and burn on council. Ask Elon Musk, he's good at it. But it doesn't take intelligence, skill or forethought. Yes, rates are going up year on year, and I too am having trouble balancing the home books. Income is not increasing, particularly for pensioners and those on benefits. Rates are unavoidable, but there's no competition. You can change your bank, your phone provider, your power company, insurance, but you can't change your council. In my view, when there is no competition, there is little in the way of downward pressure on prices. That can lead to complacency. It needs councillors to be vigilant. If cuts are to be made, it must be done intelligently and cautiously. Just because wages and salaries are often the biggest item on the balance sheet doesn't mean staff should automatically be targets. Dinosaurs? I rest my case.
As far as I'm concerned, yes, I think we need to control the rates, absolutely. I think what we need to do, and is when we get into council, is a priority list of the core infrastructure and the costs that go with it. Having set that out, we can look at what the cost of the rates are going to be on there, and from that point, we can add extra bits that can be done as a top-up across the district. If you don't do that, then we're going to end up putting things off like we have in the council for years. And every time we put it off, another 3 or 4 year term, 3-year term comes round, the cost almost doubles. And it's going to continue on unless we get control of it. Get control of it. The council, the elected council and the mayor must decide on what the work programme is. The council, the employed pump, must act on that, not the other way round.
In actual fact, the government is just now defining what council's core business is. They're going to tell us what our priorities are.
Oh, goody.
Stuff them, sorry.
Stuff them.
Yeah.
Tristan, have you got one more question and then we...
One more question.
Yeah, because I'm going to answer and then I'll have to...
You can answer it first.
Right.
I know this may be a little bit of a tricky one to answer from if you're not in the at the table in council. Digital surveillance. Councils are trialling smart city tech, facial recognition, smart poles, biometric IDs, often with no consultation. We all see around town, almost every set of traffic lights has got cameras everywhere. You walk around. Mangakino's got cameras. Where am I at? With no consultation. 5G towers, no consultation. What's your position on digital privacy and council data sharing?
Tristan, this is a really huge question, and it's really important to understanding our privacy, our rights. But just a few days ago, I was at what do they call it, Ministerial Advisory Group on Retail Crime, and police were there as well. And I have just spent the last 2 weeks walking around a lot of the local businesses in the CBD, and there's things that are happening there. The police were saying if we had good cameras, we could track those, and to the point they could go, hey, we're identifying something's happened, and before there's actually a crime in there, enable some prevention. And you know, those retailers are absolutely hurting, like everybody's hurting right now, but in just such a deep way. We're seeing more and more empty shops there. So if you'd asked me that question before I went to that workshop, I would have been, oh my goodness, you know, that absolutely we need, you know, vast controls over there. Having been to that workshop and seeing that impact, I'm now kind of going, we've got to have, but again, we come back, we need an open, transparent conversation around it, not done behind hidden doors, and understanding that that's coming in. So I think this is an evolving discussion, but we need to be involved in the discussion. So apologies that I do need to go, but I have promised my youngest that I will be home for bedtime for just once this week. Thanks everybody. Oh, thank you. You don't know how many of these I've left behind. Cheers.
I'm done with another one. Digital, it's here to stay. We're not going to be able to get rid of it. Can we control it? We probably ain't going to be able to do that either. And does it worry me? Yeah, it does. But then, if I haven't done anything wrong, it really shouldn't affect me. Sharing of data by council, yeah, depends what it was and who it was to as to whether I'd be in favour of that. Once they start sharing data with other agencies, then where does it stop? So, digital, I don't think we can stop it. It's a necessary evil. Can we rely on the government to legislate to protect us all? Well, every so often there's data breaches, you know, IRD accidentally let a whole pile of information out. It ain't going to stop it, but I'm not comfortable with it. And I just don't see any way that it can be stopped, not by the council.
Yeah, well, I haven't got a very well prepared answer to this one, but I thought it was interesting. I seem to recall, say in the 90s or so, having surveillance cameras around was kind of a big deal, and it was a thing, privacy. And then, I don't know, I sort of took my eye off the ball for a while, and now it's like all over the place, interestingly. And I'm just interested, when did all these cameras go up in Taupo? And was there even a question, or did they just happen? Does anyone know?
Lockdown properly? No, if you want to know, it started when the lady Ames was killed over at Nui College, and she'd been at a party in town, and their recruiter wasn't there at the time, and he decided we needed cameras around the place.
All right.
And as I understand it, it's actually the police that monitor them. I don't think council's collecting any data.
Yeah, we had it brought up, and there was a little bit of, it wasn't clear whether it was the police or the council.
The police do monitor them. I was shot at in town. A bullet went past my head by two teenage boys. I heard the wind of the bullet. My 11-year-old child was standing next to me, and I rang 111 and they put me straight to the police, and the police actually followed from where I was standing the cameras and caught the boys 3 blocks down. They monitor them, not the council.
I specifically asked.
And actually being shot at in town and having cameras. I would say I'm not for all digital. I'm a web developer, and that from behind, my question would be, what are they doing with the data? What are the transparency around what they're doing with the data and the controls around that, rather than them just doing data?
Yeah, that's
being shot at you, I'm appreciative of
that's
cameras.
where I think we should look at this. There should be some very strict protocols about what happens to the data that's collected, like who's responsible for maintaining it, how long can it be kept, who has access to it, and that should be very strongly controlled. What can it actually be used for? Because there are cases where people have used it for things that they shouldn't have done, and how long can that data be kept? And I think all of that needs to be done. And I don't know whether the council have anything like that done already, but I really think that sort of thing needs to be done. So everybody's very clear about what's happening to the data, where it's going, and how it's being used. Because if you don't do it, you know, you could have all sorts of people having straight access to the data, and that's not what we need in any way, shape or form.
Is it me? Oh,
It's
right.
you.
It is.
Look
We're
at-
all over the place.
You
Kick up. That's my bedtime. Anyway, I'm not really too fussed about surveillance. I think of the employees, and especially in retail, and we need those cameras in there to help protect those employees. The fear perhaps of being caught, not shoplifting, but I mean in terms of assault and violence, may actually prevent some of that stuff from going down. If you know you're going to be filmed, as has been already said, I want to know where the surveillance is. I want some form of public consultation on that, or just awareness of what's happening. Go back to the JMA, I didn't even know about it. So it's more about awareness. So what else have I got here? Crime's a major issue, and I support if it's being seen by the police, I support that 100%. I work with police, with the Coast Guard, and trust them, believe it or not. And I don't think I need to say anything else.
Well, as far as I'm aware, the cameras that are in place are not monitored by council. As far as I'm aware, they cannot not collecting data. As far as I'm aware, it's all handled by the police under legislation. I see a need for it in terms of security. I also know that insurance companies are starting to ask whether there are cameras to offset, insurance premiums and claims and recourse. It's a double-edged sword because it's also a slippery slope.
Yes.
Where does it end?
Big brother.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't know the correct answer to this, but I am concerned about what the data could be used for if it was nefariously obtained in some way, or if, heaven forbid, we end up being taken over by the Chinese or something like that would be a slippery slope too. And you talked about 5G towers, and I have actually asked how they come about, because I've never ever seen anything come through council. The council are not consulted at all. They are told that 5G towers are going up. There is no discussion at a local government level about those. They just put them there.
I assume that's what's on Rifle Range Road.
Yeah, I don't live very far from that, and I remember going around to the local dairy and going, wow, there's another one. I'm on council.
But that's within road reserve, so how does that work?
No idea, no idea, but I've specifically asked if council are consulted about where they go, where they get put, if they get put, anywhere at all, and the answer was no.
Network operators are allowed to apply to
That's
council
right.
designations to put their infrastructure in, and that gets granted by council every now and again.
Every now and again, but
But
not with
for
5
not for specific,
infrastructure, national
I mean,
infrastructure.
for a cell tower, not for
Oh, so
not for GVAC.
okay, so they've got a space
So
allocated.
council has a role to give that designation. Well, that's the wrong word, there's another word for it, but
Under the digital framework, is it like that what got brought in, is there a related in registry stuff?
it's equivalent to being able to put your power lines across the top or under the ground or
They're advised that it's happening,
yeah,
but they're not asked.
no.
So who owns them?
Would be the infrastructure chorus, I suppose. who
Yeah,
owns
the
them.
telcos own the towers.
Mm.
Yeah, and they've got because you mentioned this to me a while ago. They've got an agreement where they don't have to consult, like you or I, for a resource consent or a planning stuff. They can put their towers in where they need to. Yeah, there's some sort of special arrangement, which never used to be like that. I'm sure when they were putting radio, like antennas and towers up in the past, like back in the day, that you'd have to have consultation.
But isn't it now with 5G and other things, that people are so used to sitting on their cell phones and they want instant access to everything. And the only way that telcos can do it is to stick these towers up all over the place so people have got access to it.
I think we had instant access before 5G.
4G was
4G.
pretty sound.
Funnily enough, I feel like it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Well, we just.
I haven't put up enough towels.
Our YouTube keeps dropping out, I'm not impressed.
Well, if it comes down to that, Sky Television have got a lot to answer for.
Well, they do, that keeps dropping out as well.
That keeps dropping out as well, and they keep wanting more money.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the end of the question and answer time. A big thank you to all the candidates for coming out tonight. We're now going to have a chat about you guys.
No, it's relaxed.
So so the election is the 11th of October.
Yeah, that's the last day.
The last, yes.
Only the drips and drags apparently end up going over the last day. Most of it's done by then.
Yeah, you can get your vote into the orange boxes by midday on the 11th, not a second after.
Okay.
I think they've had about 900 so far.
And
Wow, that's low, eh? 900 so far.
And then it's, if you're posting your letter in,
Yeah.
it has to be posted by the 5th
Okay.
of October.
Yeah, just put it straight in the orange box, I wouldn't
Yeah.
rely on New Zealand.
Does anyone know what the previous voter turnout
When I
was?
stood for Waikato, it was 41%, and I stood last two.
It was around the 40% last time, to be frank.
40% of
Around
eligible
that.
voters. Okay.
Around that.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I know a few more people who turn up. This one's a bit important.
That's been important. Yeah.
Well, mind you, what are the national elections usually like? I mean,
They're a bit the same, I think.
they're not that, are they really? Oh.
I think there does seem to be a lot more public interest in this election, and I think that there's the fact that there's a referendum on holding wards is bringing more voters out too. So I'm expecting to see a bigger voter turnout.
Yeah.
I hope so.
It's actually very slow. If you look at the 1,000 votes that are in, only about 150 have been put into the referendum.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you mean they've only 150 that 900 have ticked the box, but they haven't bothered ticking the other one?
Well, last time I come Waikato, there was 2,000 blank votes, so that's what, like you were saying, 193.
It says so at the bottom of elections, NZ has the stats there, that tells you what we received. Yeah. I just wanted to make a couple of, not questions, a couple of statements. Just so you know about the LGNZ, it's 7,000 plus GST, so it's actually 80,000. Council can overturn a resolution after a certain time frame. So you can
Okay, good to know.
Council has multiple income streams, they have rates, debt, they have fees, levies and charges, they also have government funding streams and public-private partnerships.
Potential.
Yeah.
That's all potential.
Well, they do have fees charges.
We do have fees and charges, and we just put those up.
Government funding, we just missed out on, like, for example, Tourism New Zealand, there was a funding stream available for toilets. You could actually put it under some sort of tourism mindset. We missed out on an opportunity to have toilets because we just didn't get our act together to get free money to build an asset. Also, LGCI, see I have an issue with LGCI because it has a space of 5%, plus 5%. So if you engage,
What does that mean?
so local government cost index, so which has been set up by government or local government may have been. So basically, council will use that as a tool, correct? They'll use it as a tool to say, okay, within the realms of legalities. So in theory, they can say, right, our rate's going to go up by the LGCI. So it's going to be, say, plus 5% over what the standard rate of inflation is, which means we're still making our people poorer. So let's have a concern with that. We use it as an excuse not to manage our money better. That would be my emphasis to say.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So let's give a big round of applause to the candidates. Wish everyone the best of luck.
And thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah.
On a wet, windy night.
It's a wet, miserable night, but